next guest, Congressman Tom Cotton. Congressman, good morning.
Good morning, Alice. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for your time. I know you have a lot going on. There's a lot of work to do before the July 4th break, and which means you just come back and work even harder in your district. We're all aware of that. But we've been talking this hour about the president's global warming plan that he put into place, and new rules and regulations on the coal fire industry and conditions for Keystone Pipeline. And he's made it clear that he's not going to let people like you, members of Congress, get in his way. He's going to go right to the Environmental Protection Agency to get this done. What are your thoughts on his global warming plan that he unveiled yesterday?
Well, I'm opposed to the policies proposed, but I'm equally opposed to the anti-constitutional way he's pursuing them. So let me talk a little bit about both.
Sure.
On the second point, this is legislation that he couldn't get through Congress even when he had supermajorities in both chambers in 2009. The House passed a cap-and-trade bill which would have increased the price of gasoline and electricity and every other form of energy that Arkansas taxpayers use, and the Senate didn't even consider it, even though they had 60 Democratic senators, because it was so bad for the American people. Now he's just making an inline around the Congress to try to implement this by executive dictate. I don't think the Congress will stand for this, and I suspect that if he pursues it, the courts won't stand for it either.
Well, let me ask you this, Congressman. In regard to that, you say that Congress won't stand for it. If he goes about with the unilateral executive power right to the EPA, what could Congress do to stop that?
Well, currently the EPA does not have a director because the previous director has left, and a nominee is pending in the Senate. I would not be surprised to see the Senate, in particular the conservatives in the Senate, say that they will not confirm that director until she is acknowledged that she will not pursue this kind of anti-constitutional agenda, that she does not have the authority to do so, in my opinion, under the Clean Air Act. Likewise, we have the power of the purse over the EPA's budget, and we can always attach language to spending bills that prevent the EPA from implementing this kind of radical anti-coal, anti-oil and gas agenda.
And the other aspect of this, in addition to the fact that he is trying to unilaterally impose executive power on this is a tremendous blow to the coal industry, without a doubt. And we're hearing representatives in coal states that say that. But we've also had his climate advisor, Daniel Schrag, tell the New York Times this is, without a doubt, a war on coal. And they don't seem to be shying away from it. And that will cost a great deal of jobs, and it will tie our hands on, what I see as something key to our energy independence.
Absolutely. Coal is still the most abundant and most affordable source of energy, in particular the electricity that powers the homes of so many Arkansans, as well as the businesses where we work and earn a living. We have coal production in Arkansas, over in the River Valley, in my district. There's a possibility for massive production in the South in the form of lignite coal. It's a little bit of a different kind of coal, but it's still coal production. And we have a lot of power plants in Arkansas that rely on coal as the main source of energy. One that I just toured recently is the Turk Power Plant down in Hempstead County. It's the newest coal-fired utility plant in the country. The efforts to which they have gone to ensure that it has virtually no emissions are just absolutely tremendous. And I worry that it may be the last plant that's ever built if this president gets his way.
Well, and that's the sad thing. This creates, as we said, tremendous amount of jobs. It will be very detrimental. And making sure that we keep all energy options on the table is critical, not just from an economic standpoint, but as you know, you're very well aware, from a national security standpoint. So taking any issue off the table, I think, is harmful to our country. Another major issue that you guys are tackling in Washington is certainly immigration, and you have been very vocal on the fact that our federal government is failing on a core duty that we have in this country, securing the border and making sure immigration laws are enforced. Where do you stand on the current form of immigration reform laws that we have in the Senate? Just your thoughts on that, but then what the House has on paper.
The basic design flaw with the Senate legislation is this. It's amnesty first, enforcement later, maybe.
Right.
The House is proceeding, I think, on a much smarter path. We're trying to have smaller individual bills that are comprehensible, unlike the 1,200-page bill that the Senate is considering now, that we can read, the American people can read, and see that we're going to actually have real solutions. Legislation that would improve our entry-exit visa system, so we can know this 40% of all illegal immigrants are here because they overstayed a visa, not because they crossed the border. A working e-verify system for large and small businesses that is user-friendly and that allows them to ensure that their workforce and new applicants are legally authorized to work here in a way that doesn't impose costs that are too high on them. And then, of course, the need to build double-sided fencing on our border. I mean, fences work. We all know this. We all have fences around our backyard or our farms. Barack Obama has a big fence around his house.
He sure does.
If fences didn't work, then they should tear down that cast iron fence and replace it with cameras and ground sensors. But obviously, they're not going to do that.
Absolutely. Well, as you said, because they work. My guest is Congressman Tom Cotton, and we're talking about the immigration laws that are working their way through Washington right now. And clearly the goal is to get this done before the July 4th break. But there's been a lot of concern, certainly on the Senate side, and Senator Bozeman signed on with some senators that we're just moving too quickly on this. We're doing the same thing we did with Obamacare. Like Nancy Pelosi said, let's pass this thing before we find out what's in it. What are your thoughts on the suggestion we need to just slow down and narrow down this 1,200-page bill? Of course, they have in the Senate. The House is a little different, but slow down, make sure we do this right, not just right now.
I agree strongly with Senator Bozeman that the Senate process has closely resembled the final days of Obamacare, ramming through 1,200-page so-called amendments, which are actually longer than the underlying bill,
right,
which no one has read fully and understood the consequences. I mean, immigration is one of the most complicated areas of law. Then there's an underlying bill that changes that law, and now there's a 1,200-page amendment that's longer than the law. And there's no imminent deadline. Sometimes Congress works on these deadlines, whether it's a debt ceiling or potential government shutdown, when something has to happen. Nothing has to happen right now on immigration. We could take a tactical pause, as we'd say in the Army, step back, review the legislation, have a debate about it, listen to our constituents, but Harry Reid and the Senate Democrats don't want to do that. I suspect it's because they don't want their senators to hear from their constituents next week when we're all home for the 4th of July work period. So they're going to try to ram it through now. Right,
and I think Harry Reid just wants to go away on 4th of July break and not have to worry about it. But hopefully they'll slow things down and really take a look at it, because they just got the final version of the 1,200 pages of amendments last Friday and expected them to begin a serious debate on it on Monday, and it's just not possible. But in terms of that moving forward, it looks as though the latest version will pass in the Senate on that side. What do you see playing out in the House?
I do not think the House would ever pass legislation anything close to what the Senate is considering right now. As I explained earlier, the basic flaw is that it's amnesty first, enforcement later, maybe. And we're just not going to take that approach. We're going to try to address the problems that we all recognize we have, whether it's the border security, whether it's internal security like employment verification, whether it's visas for the kind of high-skilled workers that we need all across America, to include in Arkansas, for instance, doctors to come and work in our rural areas. Those are problems in which there's broad bipartisan agreement, and I don't think that we should hold solutions to those problems up just because certain people in Washington want to grant amnesty immediately. I don't think those people have Arkansans' interests at heart.
So by the July 4th holiday, where do you see things stand? We'll be still at a stalemate.
There'll be nothing that has happened on the floor of the House on July 4th. I mean, we already have our calendar. And in contrast to Barack Obama's war against coal this week, we're passing energy bills that are trying to promote American energy production. When the House Republicans will have a special meeting when we get back from the 4th of July recess to talk more about immigration and our plans. But again, right now, the Judiciary Committee is working along the path of trying to address the real immigration problems this country has in individual and shorter bills that the American people can understand.
It makes good sense to me. Congressman Tom Cotton, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts on global warming and immigration. We appreciate it and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day. All right, you too. We're going to take a break and we'll wrap things